Look, I get it. We've all seen that bike roll by with the straight pipes that literally make your ears ring, or the license plate that's been bent into a pretzel so you can't read a single letter. The thing is, these mods aren't just annoying, they're straight up illegal, and riders are getting slapped with fines left and right. Today, we're breaking down the 7 illegal modifications that every rider secretly wants, but could land you in serious hot water. Trust me, some of these consequences will shock you. The noisemakers that cost you big. Number 7 is straight pipes. And man, these things are costing riders way more money than anyone realizes. You know that sound when a bike with no muffler whatsoever comes screaming down the street and you can literally feel it in your chest? Yeah, that's what we're talking about here, and it's not just annoying your neighbors anymore. Most riders think swapping out their stock exhaust is no big deal, right? They want that throaty sound, maybe a little more horsepower, and they figure it's their bike, so who cares? Problem is, there's this whole mess of federal and state laws that most people have never even heard of. We're not just talking about noise ordinances here, though those are definitely part of it. The EPA has strict rules about emissions equipment, and when you remove your catalytic converter or install a straight pipe system, you're technically tampering with emissions controls. That's a federal violation that can cost you serious money. Then you've got state inspection requirements that vary all over the place, but generally require your exhaust to meet both sound and emissions standards. Here's what actually goes down when you get pulled over. Cop hears your bike from 3 blocks away and decides to make a stop. Initially, you're thinking, maybe a $100 noise ticket, no big deal, but then they start looking at your exhaust setup and checking for EPA certification stamps. Suddenly, you've got multiple violations stacking up on the same traffic stop. The worst part is enforcement is getting way more aggressive in certain areas. Some cities are running specific campaigns during motorcycle season where they're literally setting up with sound meters, measuring decibel levels. If your bike hits over the legal limit, which is usually around 80 to 95 decibels, depending on local laws, you're getting a ticket right there, on the spot. Fines start around $150 for basic noise violations, but I've personally seen riders get hit with penalties up to $2,500 when emissions tampering gets involved. California is especially brutal about this stuff, but other states are catching up fast. The federal EPA can technically fine you up to $37,500 per violation, though they usually don't go that extreme for individual riders. What makes this really tricky is some aftermarket exhausts look completely legal, but still break the rules. They might have baffles or catalytic converters, but if they don't have the right EPA stamps or exceed sound limits, you're still in violation. Cops who work motorcycle enforcement know exactly what to look for, and they can spot non-compliant exhausts pretty easily. Then there's the inspection nightmare. You roll up to get your annual inspection, thinking it'll be quick and easy. Nope, your bike fails immediately because the exhaust doesn't meet state requirements. Now you're stuck having to buy and install a stock exhaust system just to pass inspection, then swap back to your illegal setup afterward. That's assuming you even want to risk it again. The bottom line on exhaust modifications is fines typically start around $150 but can easily hit $2,500 or more when you factor in emissions violations and inspection failures. Multiple violations from the same traffic stop can really add up fast, and some states treat emissions tampering as a serious offense that goes on your driving record. But here's the thing about getting pulled over for noise violations. At least cops have to hear you first. Some of these other modifications we're about to talk about are basically flashing neon signs telling law enforcement to come check out your bike. Lights that scream trouble. Number 6 is underglow lighting, and honestly, it can look amazing, but you might as well put a giant sign on your bike that says, "Please pull me over, officer." We're talking about those LED strips that make your motorcycle look like it rolled straight out of some sci-fi movie. The problem is cops see colored lights on vehicles and their brain immediately goes to one place: emergency vehicle impersonation. Here's the thing about underglow that most riders don't get. It's not just about whether the lights look cool or not. Every single state has different rules about what colors you can use, where you can mount them, and how bright they can be. Some places ban any colored lighting that's visible from the front or rear of the vehicle. Others only care if you're running red and blue, which are reserved for emergency vehicles. But good luck trying to explain the difference between purple and blue to a cop during a nighttime traffic stop. The real issue is that even when your underglow is technically legal in your state, cops can still jam you up. If they think your lights are too bright and distracting other drivers, that's a safety violation. If they think you're trying to be deceptive about what kind of vehicle you're operating, that's another problem entirely. The law gives officers a lot of discretion when it comes to lighting violations. I've heard some crazy stories about this stuff. Guy in Florida got charged with impersonating a police officer because he had blue accent lights under his bike. They weren't even that bright, definitely didn't look like police equipment, but the cop decided they were close enough. Another rider in Texas got pulled over for purple underglow because the officer claimed it was distracting to other motorists, even though there's no specific law against purple lights in that area. What makes underglow enforcement really frustrating is how inconsistent it is. You might ride around for months without any problems, then boom, some cop decides your lights are a public safety threat. Maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they just don't like motorcycles. Either way, you're the one dealing with the ticket and court appearance. Then there's the whole DOT approval thing that nobody talks about. Most aftermarket underglow kits don't meet any kind of federal lighting standards. They're just cheap LED strips from China that happen to stick to your bike. If a cop wants to get technical about it, they can cite you for having non-approved lighting equipment on your vehicle. The brightness regulations are all over the place too. Some states specify exact candle power limits for auxiliary lighting. Others just say the lights can't be visible from more than a certain distance. Most underglow kits completely ignore these requirements because they're designed to be as bright and flashy as possible. What's really wild is that motorcycle underglow falls into this weird gray area where it's not quite the same as car underglow, but it's also not considered standard motorcycle lighting. Some cops treat it like a car modification, others treat it like you're running illegal emergency equipment. You never know which interpretation you're going to get. The bottom line is any colored lighting that's visible from the front or the rear of your motorcycle can be interpreted as emergency vehicle impersonation, regardless of what you actually intended. The cop doesn't have to prove you were trying to impersonate anyone, they just have to show that your lighting could be confused for emergency equipment. Speaking of lighting modifications that cause problems, let's talk about the ones that are supposed to make you safer, but actually put you in more danger. The visibility problem nobody talks about. Number 5 is aftermarket LED headlights and integrated turn signals. I bet you've thought about upgrading your lighting setup because, let's face it, stock motorcycle lights usually suck. The problem is these modifications that are supposed to keep you safe on the road often make you way more dangerous to everyone else out there. Most aftermarket LED headlights are ridiculously bright compared to stock halogen bulbs. We're talking about lights that put out 6,000 lumens or more, when your original headlight was probably around 1,000 lumens. Sounds great, right? Wrong. These things are so bright and usually so poorly aimed that they blind oncoming drivers. You think you're making yourself more visible, but you're actually creating a road hazard. The aiming issue is huge because most riders just bolt on these LED units without properly adjusting the beam pattern. Your headlight is supposed to illuminate the road, not the eyeballs of every driver coming toward you. When you blind somebody with your headlight, they can't see anything for several seconds after you pass. That includes other motorcycles, pedestrians, or obstacles in the road. Integrated turn signals are another problem that looks way cooler than it actually works. These setups combine your turn signal brake light and sometimes running light all into one sleek unit. They look modern and clean, but they create serious visibility issues that most riders never consider. DOT regulations specify minimum sizes for turn signals, plus they have to be a certain distance apart from other lights. Most integrated setups ignore these requirements completely. Your turn signal might be bright enough, but if it's too small or too close to your brake light, Other drivers might not notice when you're signaling a turn or lane change. And what makes this really dangerous is that you install these thinking you're upgrading your safety equipment. You spend money on expensive LED units, expecting better visibility. Instead, you create situations where other drivers can't properly see your intentions or get temporarily blinded by your headlight. The legal side gets messy because cops can write you up for non-DOT approved lighting equipment. Every legitimate automotive light has DOT markings somewhere on the housing. Many aftermarket motorcycle LED kits don't have these markings because they were never tested or approved for road use. They're essentially off-road lighting being used on public streets. I've read accident reports where riders with integrated turn signals got rear-ended or hit during lane changes. The car driver claimed they never saw a turn signal, and in some cases, they might be legally correct. If your signal doesn't meet federal visibility standards, it might not count as proper signaling equipment in court. Then you've got the inspection problem again. DOT-approved lights have specific markings and certification numbers. When you show up for your annual safety inspection, the mechanic is supposed to check that your lighting meets legal requirements. If your aftermarket LEDs don't have the right stamps, you're looking at another failed inspection. The worst part about integrated signals is they often use the same LED elements for multiple functions, so your turn signal might be bright when it's just blinking, but barely visible when your brake light is also activated. Other drivers see a solid light but miss the fact that it's also blinking to indicate a turn. The cruel irony here is mods designed to make you more visible often make you less visible to other drivers who need to clearly see your intentions. You're solving a problem that didn't really exist while creating new problems you never thought about. Now, if you think lighting issues create problems, wait until you hear about modifications that are specifically designed to make you invisible to law enforcement. The hide-and-seek game that always loses. Numbers 4 and 3 are tinted license plate covers and bent or relocated plates. These modifications are all about avoiding traffic cameras and red light tickets, but they actually make you way more likely to get pulled over and face serious legal problems. Riders think they're being clever by making their plate hard to read, but cops are trained to spot these modifications from blocks away. Tinted plate covers seem harmless enough, right? Just a piece of plastic that goes over your license plate to reduce glare or add some style. Problem is, most states require license plates to be clearly visible and readable from a specific distance, usually around 50 to 100 feet. Any tinting that makes your numbers or letters harder to read violates these visibility requirements. Bent plates are even more obvious. Some riders fold the bottom corner up or bend the whole plate at an angle, thinking it'll fool traffic cameras. Others relocate their plate to weird positions like under the tail or on the swing arm where it's partially hidden. These modifications stick out like a sore thumb to any cop who knows what to look for. Here's what riders don't realize about license plate violations. The fines are often higher than the traffic tickets you're trying to avoid. A bent plate that makes your registration numbers hard to read, it can cost you $200 to $500 depending on what state you're in. That's before they start checking for other illegal modifications on your bike. The camera avoidance thing is mostly pointless anyway because modern traffic enforcement systems keep getting better at reading partially obscured plates. They're using higher resolution cameras, better software, and adding more cameras every year. Plus, they're starting to use systems that can identify vehicles by more than just the license plate. What makes plate modifications really dumb is they make you memorable to every cop who sees you. Instead of blending in with traffic, you become that guy with the obviously modified plate that every officer remembers. You're actually more likely to get targeted for enforcement because you stand out from other riders. Having an obscured plate gives cops automatic probable cause to pull you over. They don't need any other reason to make a traffic stop. Once they've got you stopped, they can start looking for other violations, and trust me, they will. Your attempt to avoid one ticket just opened the door to multiple citations. The stacking effect is brutal, too. License plate violation plus whatever other illegal mods they find during the stop. Maybe they notice your straight pipes or your non-DOT headlight or your tinted visor. Each violation adds to your total fine amount and court costs. What happens during a motorcycle inspection when you have illegal modifications? Your bike fails inspection immediately, and you have to restore it to legal configuration before you can get it registered or legally ride it. The inspection station won't pass you with an obscured or improperly mounted license plate. You'll have to fix it and come back for another inspection, which means more time and money. Some states are getting really aggressive about plate violations because they see them as deliberate attempts to avoid law enforcement. What started as a simple equipment violation can escalate to charges like attempting to evade identification or obstruction, depending on how the cop wants to write it up. The hide-and-seek approach backfires because it turns routine traffic stops into detailed inspections where cops start looking for everything else that might be wrong with your bike. You drew attention to yourself for no good reason. Speaking of modifications that guarantee problems with law enforcement, there are two more that practically put a target on your back. The safety gear gamble. Numbers 2 and 1 are non-DOT helmets and excessively loud horns. These seem like personal preference things, but they can create legal problems that stick with you for years. Most riders think they're just making choices about their own safety and comfort, but there's way more legal liability involved than anyone realizes. The helmet situation is tricky because different states have different requirements. Some require DOT certification for any helmet you wear. Others let you ride without a helmet entirely, but here's the catch. Even in states where helmets aren't required, your insurance company might still care about what you're wearing if you crash. Novelty helmets are the big problem here. These are the skull caps or German-style helmets that look cool, but offer basically zero protection. They're not DOT certified because they can't pass the safety tests. If you're in a state that requires DOT helmets and you crash wearing a novelty bucket, your insurance company can deny your claim entirely. What makes this worse is insurance companies can deny claims if you were violating safety equipment laws at the time of an accident, even if the helmet wasn't a factor in the crash. So let's say you get rear-ended at a red light while wearing a non-DOT helmet. The helmet had nothing to do with the accident, but you were technically breaking the law by wearing non-approved safety equipment. The helmet situation can get even worse if you're in an accident with a non-compliant helmet. Some prosecutors will add charges like reckless endangerment or failure to use proper safety equipment. These are criminal charges, not just traffic tickets. You could be looking at points on your license, higher insurance rates, even potential jail time, depending on the circumstances. What's really messed up is insurance companies have teams of lawyers whose entire job is finding reasons to deny claims. Having a non-DOT helmet gives them an easy out, even if your head injury would have happened regardless of what helmet you were wearing. They'll argue that your violation of safety equipment laws contributed to your injuries. Loud horns over 110 decibels violate noise ordinances in most areas, but riders install train horns or air horns thinking they're improving their safety. The logic makes sense, right? Louder horns means other drivers are more likely to hear you and avoid hitting you. Problem is, these horns are so loud they violate the same noise laws as straight pipes. The horn thing is asking for trouble because any cop who hears you use an illegal horn now has probable cause to pull you over. Unlike exhaust noise that's constant when you're riding, you have to actively use your horn for cops to hear it. But when you do blast that 130 decibel train horn, you just announce to every officer within half a mile that you've got illegal equipment. I've personally seen riders get hit with noise violations for horns that cost them $300 in fines plus court costs. That's just for wanting something louder than the pathetic stock horn that came on their bike. Some areas treat excessively loud horns the same as other noise violations, with escalating fines for repeat offenses. These modifications gamble with your legal protection and financial security in ways that go way beyond the initial fine you might get. You're potentially voiding insurance coverage, creating criminal liability for yourself, and setting yourself up for way higher costs if something goes wrong. The pattern here is clear. Most illegal modifications create cascading legal problems that cost way more than riders expect when they first install them. The real cost of these modifications isn't just the fines, it's the legal complications, insurance issues, and safety risks that can follow you long after you get that first ticket. failed inspections, voided insurance claims, criminal charges for safety violations. This stuff adds up fast and creates problems you never saw coming. Here's the thing though, I'm not telling you not to modify your bike. Just understand what you're getting into and make smart choices about which risks are worth taking for you personally. Drop a comment and let me know which of these modifications you've seen cause the most trouble in your area, because enforcement varies wildly.